This is Module 2, Order of Operations. First thing we have to remember is that there are certain operations that we need to do in certain orders, and in 5th grade we add to the top of this the letter B, and that stands for brackets. And it's brackets, parentheses, exponents, then multiplication and division at the same time, moving left to right, and then addition and subtraction at the same time, moving left to right. It's please excuse my dear Aunt Sally will help me with this. And I say burp, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, because that stands for the brackets. Here's some examples. You have these examples in your book. So on page 24, first in the middle, I always write down burp, please excuse my dear. I put them on the same line so I don't forget Aunt Sally. I keep them on the same line since they happen together and I don't forget. Brackets look like this. Parentheses look like this. Exponents are like this. 4 to the second power does not mean 4 times 2. It means 4 times 4. I multiply 4 2 times. So we're going to go over here and work on the first one. And the first one tells me there's no brackets. I don't see any, but I see parentheses. So I do what's in parentheses first, which is 14 minus 5, which is 9. And then I rewrite everything else. Next, I still see more parentheses, so I do those. And I rewrite everything else. And then the only thing that's left is 9 divided by 3, so I answer that. And I circle it because I cannot use an equal sign because equal signs do not happen in expressions. Because when I'm solving expressions, it's not really solving that. I am evaluating them or simplifying them. So next, we're going to look over here. And we see in letter H, there are no brackets. There are no parentheses. So I'm going down my list. There are no exponents. There is multiplication and division, which happens in order from left to right. And I notice that in this case, the division comes first. So 6 divided by 3 is 2. I rewrite everything else, and then I can write 2 times 6 is 12. Once again, I write this down so I have it. Just as a reminder again, brackets look like this, parentheses look like this, and exponents are like this. So I'm going to follow along. We have no brackets in letter I, but we do have parentheses. So I do the parentheses first and rewrite everything else. Next, I notice there are no brackets, there are no parentheses, there are no exponents. I now have multiplication and division. So I do 11 times 2, which is 22, minus 10, and then I can just answer that. So over here, we go back to the beginning again. We're starting a new problem for letter J. We looked at there are no brackets. There are parentheses. Now in parentheses, I have to follow this order of operations in parentheses. So in parentheses, I look, and there are no exponents in the parentheses. There are no multiplication or division in the parentheses. But there is addition and subtraction, and it happens in order from left to right. In this case, the subtraction is first. So I do that. Rewriting everything else. Now I still have parentheses, so I have to finish my parentheses. And then I come out with 10. Next, letter K. We'll rewrite this. Burp, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So my brackets, my parentheses, my exponents. Now we're going to look at this one. There are brackets. I can see these big brackets right here. So within the brackets, I then have to follow all of this order of operation. And in the brackets, I do see next that there are parentheses. So I solve that first. And I keep that all in the brackets. So now I still have brackets, and I still have to continue on with this. And because the number on the outside of the brackets does not have an operation next to it, I'm going to leave the brackets there. So now I see these brackets, and I has a 6 and there's a number next to it. When there's a number next to it, it's telling me to multiply. They won't put the multiplication symbol in there. So I have to know that that means 2 times 6, and that is 12. Next, letter L. There are no brackets in this one, so we're going to start off with parentheses, and the parentheses make 4. I'm going to leave the parentheses because once again I have a number next to them without an operation. So now I just did all my parentheses. There are no exponents. I can continue on. I need to multiply and divide. Many people would say there is no multiplication, but there is. This tells me to multiply right here, so that would be a 12. And then I add them together, and I get 32. Once again, we're going to rewrite the letters to help us. You should write this every time. This is a reminder for now, for those of you who still aren't sure what everything is. I'm going to write them. Now we're going to start. Are there brackets in letter M? No, there are not. Are there parentheses? Yes. 1 plus 8 is 9. I'm going to leave the parentheses around it because I see this out here without an operation next to it. So there's no more parentheses, but I do see exponents this time. There's exponents right here. 2 to the second power means 2 multiplied 2 times, which will give me a 4. That's how that 4 is there. After exponents, it's multiplication and division. This is multiplication because it's a number next to a parentheses. And then we get an answer of 39. Next over here, we have no brackets on letter N. We do have parentheses, so we're going to rewrite that. I'm going to leave the parentheses in because there's no operation after the 2, and that way we know what to do with it. There are no exponents, so then I move to multiplication and division, and we have to remember there is multiplication there. So I do that, and then I get my answer. Next, and once again write my letters down the middle. I have my reminders. After this group, I'm not going to write the reminders, I'm just going to write the letters, because by now everyone should know what they are. Okay, next, there are no brackets, but I do see parentheses. And in the parentheses, that makes 3. I'm now done with parentheses, and after parentheses is exponents. So it says 3 to the 3rd power. Even though it's on the outside of the parentheses, it's still 3 to the 3rd power. Because it's on the outside of the parentheses, I have to do that towards everything that was in the parentheses. If it was on the inside, it's just towards a specific number. So this means 3 times 3 times 3, because it's 3 to the 3rd power. I need to do it 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9. And then 9 times 3 is 27. So this makes 27. We're going to leave that. Now I have exponents done, and I'm looking at multiplication and division. This means to multiply and divide. 27 times 4, many of you can't do in your head. You just pull it off onto the side and solve it. And it will give me 108. And it ends up giving me a negative number, which we have not learned. But you'll see in 6th grade that you can end up with negative numbers as the answer. So now we're going to go over to letter P. We have the brackets. There are none. We have parentheses right here. In parentheses, we have to follow order of operations. So we have to follow this order right here. There's no exponents in there, but there is multiplication and division. So I need to do that before I do the 8 minus anything, because multiplication and division comes first. I still have parentheses, so I can now finish out my parentheses and rewrite everything else. Now I'm left with addition and multiplication, and I see that multiplication comes first. So I do that, and I rewrite, and then everything is right there. Letter Q. This time I'm just going to write my letters in the middle, but I am not going to write my little hints. I should know them by now. So there's no brackets. but there are parentheses. And in the parentheses, there's multiplication and subtraction. And I see that multiplication comes before subtraction, so I'm going to do that first and rewrite everything else. Now I still have parentheses, so I have to finish that out. And then I can just add. Over here on the letter R, I have parentheses again. I do not have brackets, so I go right to the parentheses. In the parentheses, I have subtraction and I have exponents, and I see exponents come before subtraction. So I have to deal with that, and that means 7 times 7. It does not mean 7 to the second power. 7 times 7 is 49. So I rewrite everything. I still have parentheses, so I have to finish with my parentheses, and I rewrite everything. And then I have division and multiplication. They're all right here, but they happen in order from left to right. So what comes first, left to right, when multiplication and division in this problem? The division. So 15 divided by 3 is 5 times 9, and then I end up with 45. And here's the beginning of the homework to help you out a little. So I'm going to just write right across the top here to help me. There's my B PEMDAS. I start with this one. Number 1 has parentheses first, so I'm going to do that and rewrite, and I end up with 15. Number 2 has 2 sets of parentheses first. There's no brackets, so I do 5 times 5 is 25, and I rewrite everything else. And then I have more parentheses, so I do that. And 25 times 4 is 100. Over here, number 3, we have brackets and we have parentheses. So I have my brackets, and in my brackets there's parentheses, so I do the parentheses first inside the brackets. 11 minus 3 is 8. I rewrite everything else. I still have brackets, so I need to solve that. And I rewrite everything else. And before I add, I need to do my exponents because they come first. And 3 to the second power means 3 times 3, which is 9. So I end up with 7 plus 9, and that gives me 16. Question number 4. There are no brackets, but there are parentheses, so I rewrite my parentheses, and I rewrite everything else next to it. Next, I notice I have subtraction and I have multiplication. And multiplication comes before subtraction, so I do this first, and I end up with 150. And I rewrite everything else on both sides. Now I have 2 subtractions, so I just go in order. And then I just subtract. Number 5. I have parentheses but no brackets. In my parentheses I have division and I have addition. In PEMDAS, B PEMDAS, division comes before addition. So first I'm going to divide and rewrite everything else. There's still parentheses, so I'm going to do that. Now I have some numbers that might be a little more difficult for me, so on the side I'm going to do my multiplication, because even though I have addition, I might have addition, but multiplication comes first in PEMDAS. The M comes before the A. So this was 70, and I end up getting 78. Over here, number 6, we have parentheses again. We have division and addition in the parentheses. Division happens first, and I rewrite everything else, including my parentheses. I still have stuff inside of my parentheses, so I solve that and rewrite everything else. Now I'm left with addition and multiplication, and because I see that there's addition and multiplication, I know multiplication comes first. And then I just add the 2 together, and I end up with 100. And the last problem for this page is all the way up here on the right. Number 7, everything is in the parentheses. There are no brackets, but I see a lot of multiplication. So first thing I'm going to do is the first multiplication, and I'll just keep writing everything. Just 15 times 3 minus 2 minus 9. So I still have multiplication, so I go 15 times 3 is 45, minus 2 minus 9. And I'm just going to subtract. 45 minus 2 is 43, minus 9. And now I'm down to the final thing right here. And 43 minus 9, I end up with 34. And that's how we do order of operations.